Laughter rippled through the private dining room, blending with the clink of crystal glasses and the faint scrape of silver against porcelain. Golden light spilled down from the chandeliers bathing the long, white-clothed table where 17 people enjoyed their 4-course meal at Chateau Blanc, a restaurant so exclusive that even newly rich social climbers hesitated to book a reservation. But tonight, what should have been a celebration of my 35th birthday was nothing more than a stage for my husband's cruelty. Travis pushed back his leather chair with a harsh scrape, the sound cutting through the chatter like a blade. Every head turned toward us. His champagne flute remained perfectly steady in his hand, no tremor, no hesitation, just icy control. That composure had always been his weapon, his eyes fixed on me, dark with disdain. Then he said it, slowly, clearly, in a voice meant to pierce every corner of the room. "A woman like you should be grateful I even looked your way. You're a disgrace." The words slammed into me like a physical blow. For a heartbeat, the entire table froze. The waiter carrying a tray of steaks stopped mid-step. The laughter that had filled the room evaporated, leaving only silence, so thick it seemed to press against my skin. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught the faint smirks curling on the lips of Patricia Rothschild and Jennifer Cross, 2 women who had always treated me like I was trespassing in their gilded world. Their satisfaction was unmistakable. They weren't horrified by Travis's cruelty. They were entertained. Before we dive into true revenge stories, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Hearing from people around the world makes these stories even more powerful and reminds us how connected we all are. That was the worst part. To them, this wasn't my birthday. It was a show. And I was the evening sacrifice. Travis placed the champagne flute on the table, with surgical precision slipped on his jacket, and adjusted his cufflinks as if nothing monumental had just happened. He didn't look at me again. He didn't even acknowledge the stunned silence of his colleagues. Instead, he delivered the final twist of the knife. "Happy birthday, Savannah." Then he walked out. The heavy door closed behind him with a muffled thud, and suddenly every other guest found something fascinating on their phones, their plates, or the tablecloth. No one met my eyes. No one offered a hand, a word, or even the decency of shared outrage. They simply pretended I wasn't there because acknowledging me would mean acknowledging the cruelty they'd just applauded with their silence. That's when I noticed it. The leather billfold placed neatly in front of me like a verdict. I didn't have to open it to know the number waiting inside, but I did anyway. The bold print glared up at me. $3, $847.92. 17 people. Prime steaks, imported wine, endless cocktails and desserts flown in from Paris kitchens I would never see. And Travis had left it all for me. For one dizzy moment, heat rushed to my face and my throat tightened, as if tears were begging for release. This was exactly what he wanted, for me to crumble here in front of the people he'd spent years convincing that I was beneath him. But I didn't cry. I didn't beg. Instead, I sat back in my chair and let the silent stretch let it burn into their expensive suits and sparkling diamonds. One by one, the guests excused themselves, murmured lies about early meetings, urgent calls, or sudden fatigue. They scattered like cockroaches when the kitchen light flicks on. In the end, only I remained, me and the bill. I reached into my purse and pulled out a credit card, not the one Travis monitored, but the card I'd opened 6 months ago under my own name, quietly building credit without his knowledge. My hand didn't shake as I placed it on the bill. The waiter glanced at me with something that looked like pity, but I held his gaze until he nodded and walked away. When he returned, I signed my name with steady strokes. Savannah Turner. My maiden name. The name I'd almost forgotten until that moment. As I stood to leave, the November wind cut through my red dress like knives, but I barely felt it. My humiliation was real, but beneath it something else stirred, calm, cold, and deliberate. Because what Travis didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this wasn't the end. This was evidence, and evidence in the right hands was power. The alarm buzzed at 5:30 a.m., soft and polite, but Travis didn't stir. He never did anymore. Somewhere between making partner and declaring himself untouchable, he'd trained his body to ignore the sound. He knew I would get up first. I slipped into the kitchen that gleamed like a showroom. The espresso machine blinked at me, waiting for its ritual. 14 seconds to grind beans, no more, no less. Water at exactly 200 degrees. Cups pre-warmed. His rules, not mine. The machine cost more than a year of rent from our first apartment where we used to laugh and dance while pasta boiled. Now I performed a ceremony of precision while he scrolled stock reports by the windows. "Remember, we have the Washingtons tonight," he said without looking up. "Wear the black Armani, and do something about your hair." "It's my birthday," I reminded him gently, hoping he'd hear the question beneath the words. "Birthdays are arbitrary constructs," he replied, draining his espresso and handing me the cup like a servant collecting dishes. That was our morning. I presented, he pronounced. Love, once loud and reckless, had learned to whisper itself into silence. At Lincoln Elementary, my other world waited. The halls smelled of pencil shavings and crayons, the walls decorated with lopsided art projects and crooked posters. "Happy birthday," Mrs. Mitchell Sophia barreled into me with glitter on her cheeks. Behind her, 27 more voices joined the chorus. "If you're still watching, comment 1, so I know you're still with me." They'd made cards, construction paper folded unevenly, names spelled with brave guesses. Some versions of me had enormous arms, others no neck at all. All of them wore the same wide smile. "This is wealth. Travis will never understand," I thought, tucking the cards into my bag. Love that couldn't be deposited, leveraged, or displayed at a country club. In the lounge, Janet ate a cafeteria salad that somehow tasted better than the $40 appetizers Travis loved. "Big plans tonight?" she asked. "Dinner at Chateau Blanc. 17 of his people. The Washingtons, too. On your birthday." Her face softened the way teachers do when a child is certain of the wrong answer. "It's fine," I said quickly. "He says birthdays don't matter." Janet set down her fork. "When was the last time he did something just for you? Not for optics. For you." I couldn't answer. Every bracelet, every trip, every dinner had strings attached to Travis's career. There was no just because anymore. After school, I lingered, wiping glue from desks and gathering forgotten mittens. Sunlight spilled across the rug squares, warming the alphabet letters. Here I was, simply enough. Driving home, I passed the Riverside Country Club, its hedges trimmed with military precision. My membership card sat in my wallet like a pass to a world where I never belonged. I thought of the women there, Patricia, Jennifer, their careful smiles, their cruel whispers. They'd see me tonight, and they'd be watching. At home, I laid out 2 dresses, the black Armani Travis had approved, and the red one I'd bought years ago when I still chose clothes for how they made me feel. I let my fingers linger on the red fabric, small, defiant like oxygen. From my jewelry box, I lifted my grandmother's emerald earrings, not large, not flashy, but real. She'd worn them through hardship, through illness, through everything life threw her way. For my brave girl, she'd told me. When I fastened them, something inside me steadied. My phone buzzed. A text from Travis running late. "Meet you there." Of course. Arriving together was never the performance he wanted. I twisted open my grandmother's coral lipstick worn with age and smoothed it across my lips. In my pocket, I slipped the bead bracelet Sophia had given me. Cheap plastic, bright as hope. Outside, the November air bit at my cheeks. The city pulsed with impatience, horns blaring, taxis honking everyone late for something important. My reflection stared back from the glass storefront, a woman in a red dress, emerald earrings, and lipstick the color of defiance. The cracks in my marriage weren't sudden earthquakes. They were tiny adjustments, a tone, a schedule, a dress code. And now they were visible jagged lines running through the life Travis had built for me. The car pulled up to take me to Chateau Blanc. I reached for the door handle, then paused. My hand tightened around the bracelet in my pocket. Arbitrary, he'd said. But dignity was never arbitrary. By the time the first bell rang at Lincoln Elementary, the smell of burnt coffee and pencil shavings had already settled into the hallways. Children's voices echoed like bird calls bouncing off bulletin boards plastered with crooked math charts and glitter-heavy art projects. Here the air wasn't curated with imported candles or polished by silent cleaning crews. Here it smelled like living. Happy birthday. Mrs. Mitchell Sophia was the first to throw her arms around me, her ponytail smudged with glitter that clung instantly to my cardigan. Behind her, the entire class erupted into a chorus, 28 voices rising without hesitation. I blinked in surprise. "How did you all know?" Michael pointed proudly to the oversized calendar taped to the wall, where today's square was circled in red marker. In shaky block letters, someone had written, "Birthday. Yay, we're detectives," he declared, his chest puffing out. "Plus, you told us last month when we talked about birthdays." They handed me a stack of cards they'd made during free reading time. Construction paper folded awkwardly, stickers, half-peeled marker words that wandered across the page. Some versions of me had superhero capes, others had crooked glasses. All of them were smiling. It was messy, loud, and absolutely perfect. This is real wealth, I thought as I fanned through their creations. Not the kind Travis displayed at the country club, but the kind you couldn't measure in portfolios or bank balances, the kind that came with glue stains and misspelled words and an authenticity no amount of money could counterfeit. At recess, I sat with Janet in the lounge, nursing coffee that tasted faintly of rust. She tilted her head at the glitter still dusted on my sleeve. Special occasion. "My birthday," I admitted. Her eyes brightened. "Plans tonight," I forced a smile. "Dinner at Chateau Blanc. 17 of Travis's colleagues. The Washingtons, too." Janet's fork hovered midair. "On your birthday, he says birthdays are arbitrary constructs." I tried to laugh, but it came out brittle. Janet set her salad down. "Savannah, when was the last time he did something just for you, not for show, not for networking, just because you wanted it?" I opened my mouth, but the truth lodged like a stone in my throat. The tennis bracelet, bought only after Marcus's wife had mocked my minimalist jewelry. The weekend in the Hamptons. A client's daughter's wedding. Even our anniversary dinner. 2 investors happened to be at the same restaurant. Not once, I realized. Not once in years. Janet didn't push. She simply squeezed my hand. "I hope tonight you remember what matters. Sometimes we forget until life makes us notice." When the bell rang, I returned to my classroom. The children spilled in, smelling of grass and sweat, their laughter bright enough to push away Janet's words. Michael tugged at my sleeve. "We made you something else." From his backpack, he pulled a plastic bead bracelet strung unevenly on elastic, red, yellow, and a single green bead that didn't match. He pressed it into my palm with all the solemnity of a diamond merchant. "It's not fancy," he whispered, "but it's real." The bracelet was warm from his hand. I slipped it onto my wrist, the beads clattering softly against each other. Later, when the final bell released the chaos of backpacks and lunchboxes, I lingered in the quiet classroom. The setting sun cast a golden wash across the alphabet rug, illuminating the cards still taped to my desk. I thought about Travis's world, the rigid place settings, the silent evaluations, the constant measuring of worth in dollars and prestige. And then I thought about here, about the 8-year-olds who believed birthdays were magic, who gave bracelets not to impress, but because their hearts told them to. As I gathered my things, I caught my reflection in the classroom window, a woman holding a stack of crooked cards, wearing a cheap plastic bracelet with the same pride others wore diamonds. For the first time in weeks, I smiled, because here I wasn't an embarrassment. Here I wasn't a charity case. Here I was enough. The Riverside Country Club always smelled like chilled roses and old money air-conditioned to a precise temperature that seemed designed to keep sweat and sincerity from forming. A valet opened my door before I could reach the handle, eyes sliding over my department store dress with the polite indifference of someone trained to pretend cloth has a caste system. Inside, the main dining room glowed under barrel-vaulted ceilings, cream linens, monogrammed china, centerpieces of white roses arranged with military discipline. The room hummed with the soft clatter of cutlery and the low laughter of people who were used to being accommodated. Savannah Patricia Rothschild waved from a table near the window. Diamonds trembled at her throat like warning bells. Beside her, Jennifer Cross typed on her phone with the concentrated focus of someone live curating her life for 40,000 followers. I could feel the calculation in their smiles as I approached like I was a project they'd agreed to mentor because optics demanded charity work. "Sit with us," Patricia purred. "We were just talking about the fundraiser, the one for the art museum," Jennifer added. "A black tie gala is so necessary right now. High culture is starved." I took my seat and folded my hands in my lap to keep from worrying the hem of my dress. "There's a public school library down the block missing a whole shelf of nonfiction. The kids keep checking the same 3 biographies." Silence punctured the conversation like a pin. Patricia's smile iced over, then thawed into something condescending. "What a sweet thought." Jennifer tilted her head. "But the museum brings in donors. Visibility matters. You know how it is." The waiter arrived with the wine list. Patricia didn't glance at it. "We'll have the 18 Cisac," she said as if ordering an Uber. 2 bottles. She knew I knew its price because Travis had ordered it last week to impress clients. She wanted me to hear the number in my head and translate it to months of classroom supplies. When the burgundy wine arrived, the stems flashed in the light. Patricia lifted her glass, her wrist loose, her grip somehow careless and precise at once. "2, polish," she said with a chirp. "It's everything." She tipped her wrist. The wine leapt from crystal to fabric in a clean arc, blooming across my lap in a violent red flower. "Oh, no," Patricia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth with the theatrical horror of a silent movie star. "Your sweet little dress." The room turned, heads swiveled, conversations paused. She began blotting my skirt with white napkins, pressing hard, ensuring the stains set deep. "Jennifer, don't you have something in your car? Gym clothes, perhaps. They might work. In a pinch." Jennifer's eyes flickered with delighted problem-solving. "Designer athleisure," she said. "It's very forgiving." "I'm fine," I said, my cheeks burning. The napkins scraped at my thighs like erasers that only darkened the page. "Please, really, it's okay." Patricia kept dabbing. "I'm just so clumsy." Her voice carried to nearby tables with surgical projection. "And this marble is so unforgiving, isn't it?" By the time I escaped to the restroom, the stain had spread into an abstract map across my skirt, darker at the edges where the club soda had bled it out. Under fluorescent lights, the damage looked like evidence. I locked myself in a stall and sat fully dressed on the closed lid, breathing through my nose until my hands stopped shaking. Outside, voices floated in. Patricia's pitched, pleasant, venomous. Poor thing. Travis really did marry his charity case, didn't he? Jennifer's laugh was a bell. "You can dress them up, but breeding always shows." "Last month she suggested a fundraiser for public school teachers," Patricia said, incredulous. "As if that's the committee's purpose." "Travis must be mortified," Jennifer added, faux sympathy dripping. "Imagine bringing her to firm events." I stared at the stain, a dark country on a pale map. Somewhere under the chemical brightness, something settled inside me, not a collapse but a calibration. My grandmother would have called it a line in the sand. When I finally emerged, the attendant handed me a stack of paper towels without a word. I rinsed the worst of the wine and held the damp fabric under the hand dryer, watching the heat ripple the stain into a permanent bruise. In the mirror I saw my face sharpen, different, not harder exactly, clearer. Back at the table a salad had appeared in front of my empty chair, little gems and shaved fennel arranged like an apology. Patricia clasped my hand when I sat. I felt awful. She said, her thumb rubbing a small circle on my skin. "These things happen." "I'm fine," I said evenly. Jennifer leaned in, her voice syrup sweet. "You know there's a wonderful stylist who could help you refine your wardrobe. Small adjustments change everything. Travis would love it." I took a measured sip of water. "I'll keep that in mind." Patricia dabbed her lips with a napkin. "And do consider the museum gala. The committee is looking for diverse perspectives." "Public school teachers are diverse," Jennifer chirped. "In their own way." A laugh fluttered down the table. Someone else listening entertained. I pictured my classroom's crooked bulletin boards, Sophia's bracelet on my wrist, the stack of birthday cards with misspelled magic. I pictured Travis standing by our windows, dictating optics to the skyline. And then I pictured something else, the look on his face when appearances stopped obeying him. The waiter cleared plates. Patricia ordered dessert for the table, a flourless chocolate cake that required 3 languages to pronounce. As the slice landed in front of me, she gave my skirt a sympathetic glance. "Chocolate hides stains," she said, victorious. I set down my fork. "You should be careful with the wine," I said pleasantly. "Would be a shame to ruin your dress." For one clean second, Patricia's eyes flashed surprise, then calculation, then a smile that didn't reach her cheeks. "Touché," she said. "You do have a little edge after all." "Teachers learn fast," I replied. "We have to." The check never touched our table. At the country club, bills were ghosts that passed through husbands, and house accounts never contaminating women's hands. We rose as a flock chairs pushed in by invisible staff conversations, resuming at volume just loud enough to be overheard. "See you at the gala," Patricia sang as we reached the door. "And do tell Travis I'll call about the hedge fund thing." Outside, the sun burned so clean it made everything inside feel staged. A breeze lifted the hair from my neck, and the wine dried into a darker map on my skirt. I could have cried then over the stain, the performance, the way they'd choreographed my humiliation with perfect etiquette. Instead, I opened my phone, typed a name I'd tucked into my wallet 3 days before, and saved the contact to my favorites, Rachel Forensic Accounting. Then I did something small and impolite. I laughed, not loudly, not cruelly, just enough to hear my own sound again. Because the lesson of the country club wasn't about dresses or breeding or committees. It was about precision, and I had learned it. The first crack appeared on a Thursday afternoon, disguised as a migraine. I had left Lincoln Elementary early, the pounding in my skull too much even for third-graders' chatter. The house was quiet when I arrived, Travis's Audi missing from the garage. He'd told me he was flying to Boston for a client meeting. I carried his navy suit upstairs to hang in the closet. As I shook out the sleeves, a slip of paper fluttered to the carpet. At first I thought it was dry cleaning instructions. Then I saw the embossed logo, Les Bernardins. The bill was time-stamped for the previous night, 8:47 p.m., precisely when Travis had texted me from Boston claiming exhaustion from presentations. 2 entrees, oysters, champagne, and the chocolate soufflé he always swore was too rich for him. My throat tightened. I bent closer, scanning the details like a teacher grading an exam. The charge was for 2 people. 2. My hand trembled so badly the numbers blurred. Then I saw it, the faint, deliberate smear on his collar. Lipstick. Fresh plum, not my coral, or the nude shades I wore when I remembered to try. My stomach lurched. Whoever she was, she wanted me to find it. I pressed the collar to my nose. Perfume. Musky, expensive, foreign to me. A scent that did not belong in my marriage. My first instinct was denial. Maybe it was a mistake. A client dinner, a clumsy hug. But the evidence lay on the carpet between my bare feet. I snapped photos, receipt, collar, perfume-stained fabric, saving them to a hidden folder I labeled tax documents. Then I placed everything back exactly as I'd found it, like a burglar wiping prints. 10 minutes later, I was on my knees in the guest bathroom, retching until my ribs ached. That night, Travis kissed my forehead when he came home. Exhausting day, he sighed, loosening his tie. Boston was brutal. He poured himself a glass of wine, talking about turbulence and clients, while I plated the chicken I'd roasted. He complimented the seasoning. I smiled back with teeth that felt like glass nodding, while bile still burned my throat. Insomnia became my companion. I lay awake beside him, listening to the rhythm of his breathing, while my mind looped through a carousel of images, plum lipstick, champagne bubbles, the way he hadn't even bothered to wash the scent off. One night at 2 a.m., I crept into his office. The filing cabinet stood like a fortress, but the key was always in the top drawer. I pulled out the folder labeled insurance and found something else inside our prenup. 18 pages of legal jargon I had skimmed and signed on our wedding day because Travis assured me it was just formality. The clauses protected his assets, his accounts, his future. Mine barely warranted a paragraph. But on page 12, buried in subsection 7b, I found something new, the moral turpitude clause. Any party guilty of financial crimes, documented adultery, or actions bringing public disgrace to the marriage would forfeit all protections. I stared until the words branded themselves into my brain. He had insisted on this clause. He had laughed, saying, "Doesn't matter for us savvy, standard boilerplate." But now, with my phone full of receipts and perfume-stained evidence, it mattered very much. 3 weeks later, at a teachers' conference in Albany, fate seated me across from a woman named Rachel. She had sharp eyes that missed nothing and a calm, cutting way of speaking. "You look exhausted," she said, stirring burnt coffee. "When's the last time you slept through the night?" I blinked. "Months." She handed me a card. Rachel Lawson, Forensic Accounting. Sometimes, she said, knowledge is power, and sometimes we need power more than we need sleep. Her words lodged in my chest. That card burned in my wallet for 3 days before I dialed the number. My voice shook, but I managed, "I need help understanding my finances." Rachel didn't ask why. She only said, "Bring your last 3 bank statements. And Savannah, be safe." I hung up and sat in my parked car outside Lincoln Elementary, watching kids kick a soccer ball across the blacktop. My life looked normal from the outside. PTA flyers in the windows, goldfish crackers in my glove compartment. But inside, something had shifted. I wasn't just a wife anymore. I was a woman with evidence, a teacher who had read the fine print. And for the first time in years, I had leverage. The coffee shop on Elm Street smelled like cinnamon rolls and burnt espresso. Rachel was already there, laptop open, her blazer sharp against the cracked vinyl booth. She looked more like a prosecutor than an accountant, which I realized was exactly what I needed. "Let's see what we've got," she said, motioning for me to hand over the folder I'd smuggled from Travis's office. My fingers shook as I slid over the bank statements. Rachel's eyes skimmed the pages once, then again, slower this time. Her pen began tapping the table in rhythm. "Here, look at this withdrawal, $8,000 labeled as client entertainment. Same date as this St. Regis hotel charge." She looked up. "That wasn't business, Savannah. That was champagne and room service for 2. The words made my stomach twist, but Rachel wasn't finished. She drew arrows between dates and numbers, mapping connections, invisible to me. See this jewelry purchases that don't align with your collection? Lingerie from La Perla filed as a gift. Monthly transfers to an account that isn't yours or joint. She paused, meeting my eyes. He's funding another life. 12,000 a month minimum. I pressed a hand to my mouth. 12,000. More than my entire teaching salary. Rachel slid her laptop toward me. This is what I do. I don't just follow the money. I read it. And Savannah, your husband's story, is screaming at me. On her screen, spreadsheets came alive, columns of dates, vendors' transfers. Each line became a breadcrumb leading to a bigger picture. This isn't just adultery. Rachel said, her voice low. It's embezzlement. He's pulling from client accounts, cycling money offshore, and bringing it back as if it's investment returns. That's wire fraud. I leaned back, the booth's vinyl sticking to my dress. You're telling me my husband is a criminal. I'm telling you he's sloppy. Narcissists always are. They believe they're too smart to get caught, which makes my job easier. She tapped the prenup I'd brought along. And you've got something most women don't. The moral turpitude clause. You document this properly, and Travis doesn't just lose you, he loses his empire. Her certainty steadied me. For months I'd been drifting, suffocating under humiliation and doubt. Now the numbers offered clarity. Rachel leaned in. I need you to do 3 things. First, open an account in your name only. A credit union will do. Start building independent credit. Second, document everything: screenshots, receipts, even conversations. Think of yourself as a reporter, not a victim. Third, and this is the hardest, don't confront him. Not yet. You let him believe you're still in the dark. That's how we get ahead. Her eyes softened. Savannah, you're stronger than you think. But strength without strategy is wasted. Let's give your strength a plan. I left the coffee shop clutching a folder of photocopies and Rachel's words like a lifeline. The late afternoon sun turned the city streets gold, but all I could see were numbers dancing in my head: 12,000 a month, 2.3 million stolen from elderly clients, offshore transfers. Back home, Travis was in his study laughing into his phone. No, it's covered. Trust me, the accounts are airtight. His voice carried the ease of a man certain the world bent around him. He didn't even look up when I set his dinner on the table. For the first time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt dangerous. That night as he slept, I opened my own laptop and replayed Rachel's lessons. I circled withdrawals in red ink. I built my own spreadsheet, clumsy but honest, each entry a thread in a tapestry of betrayal. The evidence grew heavier, but so did my resolve. In the quiet of our apartment, I touched my grandmother's emerald earrings, still resting in their velvet box. She had told me to wear them when I needed strength, but now I realized strength wasn't only about surviving humiliation. It was about preparing for the moment when humiliation turned into proof. Travis thought he'd buried me in shame. Instead, he'd handed me a map, and with Rachel by my side, I was learning how to read it. The knock came just after 4 o'clock on a Thursday. I'd barely dropped my school bag by the door when 2 women swept into my apartment like they owned the place. One carried a garment rack that barely fit through the doorway. The other wheeled in a case big enough to stock an entire Sephora counter. Mrs. Mitchell, the taller one, asked, though it wasn't a question. Her smile was professional, her heels sharper than her tone. I'm Vivian. Your mother-in-law arranged for me to help you prepare for the birthday celebration. Birthday celebration. The words felt hollow. Travis hadn't mentioned arrangements. To him, my birthday was a networking opportunity. To his mother, apparently, it was a makeover campaign. Within minutes, my living room was unrecognizable garment bags draped over chairs, silk dresses hung like hostages, mirrors propped against the walls. Vivian circled me with a tape measure, her assistant typing numbers on an iPad as if my body were an inconvenient equation to be solved. Bust 34, waist 27, hips 36. She clicked her tongue. Too soft here, too angular there, but we can work with it. I crossed my arms over my chest. I didn't ask for this. Vivian's smile tightened. Mrs. Mitchell specifically requested that we ensure you're properly styled. There will be significant people attending. You'll want to make the right impression. The right impression. My mother-in-law's favorite phrase. Translation. Don't embarrass Travis. Vivian held up a dress that looked more like architectural scaffolding than clothing. This would be stunning with proper undergarments. We'll also discuss fillers for the lips, perhaps a touch of work around the eyes. Dr. Morrison is excellent with mature skin. Mature, I repeated, stunned. I'm 34. Exactly. Her tone was brisk. The right enhancements now will buy you years of relevance. My jaw clenched so hard it ached. I thought of the kids in my classroom, their sticky hugs, their glitter-covered birthday cards. None of them cared about crow's feet or designer labels. They just wanted me to show up. For 2 hours I endured their assessments. Your hair lacks volume. Your skin is uneven. These arms could use definition. They draped dress after dress over me, clucking like surgeons preparing for an operation. By the time they finally packed up, promising to return with better options, my living room felt desecrated. When the door closed, I sank onto the couch, the cushion sighing beneath me, as though it understood. I should have cried. Instead, I laughed, a dry, shaky sound that startled me, because somewhere in the middle of being measured, pinched, and criticized, I had stopped feeling humiliated. I had started feeling furious. That night, I met Rachel at the coffee shop again. She took one look at my face and ordered 2 slices of pie without asking. Rough day. My mother-in-law sent a stylist to fix me, I said flatly. Rachel's expression hardened. Of course she did. Because you're the problem, not the man siphoning 12 grand a month into a mistress's account. The waitress set down the pie. Rachel pushed mine closer. Eat, then tell me everything. As I described the garment racks, the lip filler suggestions, the way Vivian called my skin mature. Rachel's pen flew across her notebook. When I finished, she leaned back. Savannah, listen to me. This isn't about you. It's about control. Every insult, every correction, every dress they choose for you, it's designed to make you smaller, more manageable. And the smaller you feel, the bigger Travis gets. I swallowed a bite of pie that tasted more like ash than apples. So what do I do? Rachel smiled, sharp and sure. You stop playing their game. You wear what makes you feel like yourself. You walk into that dinner on your terms, not theirs. And when the time comes, you make sure every single one of them sees the truth. Her confidence wrapped around me like armor. For months I had been drowning in shame, but now the humiliation felt like tinder. Rachel was teaching me how to strike the match. When I got home, Travis was in his study, bourbon in hand. Vivian stopped by, right? He asked casually. She did. Good. She'll make sure you don't embarrass me. Just follow her lead, Savannah. Try not to make this difficult. I didn't answer. Instead, I went to our bedroom and opened my jewelry box. My grandmother's emerald earrings winked up at me from their velvet bed. She had called them her courage stones. I clasped them to my ears and studied my reflection. Not polished, not flawless, but real. And for the first time in a long while, I felt ready, because my birthday wasn't going to be their stage. It was going to be mine. Chateau Blanc glowed like a jewel box on the corner valet lights flickering against the wet pavement. Inside, the private dining room had been staged with the precision of a deposition. A long table, 18 place cards, crystal aligned so exactly it looked measured by laser. The maitre d' Henry met my eyes with a flicker of recognition, compassion, disguised as professionalism. Mrs. Mitchell, he said quietly, your party has started to arrive. Started without me. He led me past velvet drapes into the low murmur of money at rest. Laughter spooled from the bar where Marcus held court, a martini raised like a gavel. Patricia sparkled under the sconce's diamonds, catching every stray photon. Jennifer angled her phone for the right shot, then pretended not to. Amber Lawson, Travis's secretary, occupied a seat with the ownership of a woman who knows she'll be deferred to. There she is, Marcus called, arms thrown wide. The birthday girl. Not my name, not Savannah, not even Mrs. Mitchell. A role, a prop. Right this way, Henry murmured, placing me 3 seats down from the head, not beside the empty chair reserved for Travis, but where a camera would catch every reaction. Of course, table placement matters. Across from me, Amber gave a warm, sharp smile. Travis asked me to make sure everything's perfect for you. He's so thoughtful. Her perfume drifted across the linen, expensive, intimate, familiar from another man's jacket. I folded my napkin in my lap and decided to keep my hands still. The first course arrived, oysters nested in shaved ice that smoked like a spell. Marcus lifted his glass. Savannah, you're living proof. Travis is the most charitable man we know. Laughter burst brittle and obedient. Patricia leaned in, voice pitched to Carrie. You must join our philanthropy committee. We could use someone who understands the other half. Teachers are essentially professional babysitters, someone added helpfully. Valuable, of course, in a quaint way. Across the room, Henry's jaw ticked. It was the smallest of tells, but I saw it. Witness, my mind said. Catalog. Between courses, a server refilled Patricia's glass. Wine arced toward the rim, then stopped. No accidents tonight. They wanted precision cruelty, not chaos. Savannah. Amber touched her necklace, letting the gold chain gleam against skin. We've placed the Washingtons at the far end. Travis didn't want you to feel overwhelmed. Consider it, I said. He's always considered optics. Exactly, Amber said, missing the point on purpose. The main course landed steaks glossed with butter sides in copper pans. Conversation swelled to cover the sound of my breath. The chair beside the head remained empty. Travis arrived 40 minutes late, laughing, tie-loose whiskey warmth already in his voice. He didn't scan for me. He scanned for status, who'd shown up, who'd looked impressed. He slid into the head chair and clasped Marcus's shoulder like a reward. Sorry, team, he announced to the table. Not to me. Real money on the table tonight. He smelled like a bar at closing time and a woman whose fragrance didn't live in my bathroom. He finally looked in my direction, taking in the red dress, the emeralds at my ears, the family I'd chosen to wear. Displeasure crossed his face like a shadow. Interesting choice, he said. I thought we agreed on the black. It's my birthday, I said mildly. I wanted to feel like myself. He smiled. Not at me, at the audience. That's the problem, isn't it? You want to be yourself instead of better. Silence fell with a neat, practiced click. Even the servers paused, plates poised. I reached for my water, let the glass cool my fingers. If I'm such an embarrassment, why did you marry me? His chair scraped back. He stood slowly, savoring the height advantage, the attention. Because I thought I could fix you, he said, voice smooth as cut stone. Polish you up, teach you how to belong. But class can't be learned. You're still the same small-town nobody I've found. Someone's fork clattered against china. No one breathed. Henry set a leather billfold by my hand with the gentleness of a condolence card. Travis slid into his jacket. Happy birthday, Savannah, he said like a toast. A woman like you should be grateful I even looked your way. He turned and walked out. Phones reappeared like prairie dogs after thunder. Amber mumbled something about an early morning and trailed him. Others scattered with murmured apologies to no one in particular. In 90 seconds, the room was an echo chamber of abandoned dessert spoons and wilting centerpieces. I opened the bill. $3,847.92. What I felt first wasn't shame. It was clarity, not a spotlight, but daylight. I reached into my bag and removed the card I'd opened 6 months ago at the credit union in my name only. The digits felt like a handhold on a cliff. "Will this be together or separate?" the young server asked, voice trembling with the crisis of etiquette no training had covered. "Together," I said, "and please add a 20% gratuity. It isn't your fault the manners were bad." His throat worked. "Yes, ma'am." When the receipt returned, I signed Savannah Turner, the name that still fit. I asked Henry for a manager's card. He gave me his own embossed and discreet, and lowered his voice. "We have cameras," he said. "Audio on the table mics for training. If you ever need—" Context. "Training," I repeated, letting the words sit like a seal. "I might." The wind slapped cold against my legs as I stepped outside. My phone buzzed with Travis's name, then Marcus's, then an unknown number I recognized as Patricia's assistant. I let them stack up unanswered. The Uber's taillights reddened the puddles like spilt wine. In the back seat, I unsnapped my grandmother's earrings and held them in my palm where they warmed. Not trophies. Anchors. I texted Rachel one line. "He did it in public. I have witnesses." Her reply came fast. "Good. Public disgrace, plus documented adultery, plus financial crimes equals Clause 7B. Call me when you're home." As the car rolled through the city, reflections flashed past window displays, strangers the life I would no longer pretend to fit. My shame had slid off somewhere between the leather billfold and the maitre d's quiet fury. What remained was steady and simple. This wasn't the end of my birthday. It was the beginning of my case. When I got home that night, the apartment looked like a museum of someone else's life. Travis's cufflinks still glinted on the dresser, his cologne hovered faintly in the air, and the framed photos of our wedding smiled down like they belonged to strangers. I dropped my heels in the hallway and sank onto the edge of the bed, still in the red dress, still holding my grandmother's emerald earrings in my fist. My phone lit up every few seconds. Travis, Marcus Patricia's assistant, even Vivian. Each message piled on top of the last. "Call me. Explain yourself. Do you realize what you've done?" For once, I didn't reply. Instead, I opened Rachel's message again. Clause 7B. Public disgrace. We have leverage. The next morning, I walked into Rachel's office carrying Henry's card and the crumpled receipt from Chateau Blanc. She already had her laptop open. "Sit," she said. "Tell me everything word for word." I recited it, all the insults, the way Travis stood at the head of the table like a king, delivering a sentence, the $3,847 bill he left for me to pay. Rachel typed so fast the keys sounded like gunfire. When I finished, she leaned back, eyes narrowed. Perfect. Public setting, documented witnesses, financial abandonment. And if Henry's cameras have audio, she tapped her pen against her notebook. We have corroboration. My hands trembled. Rachel, I can't face them again. You won't, she said firmly. The evidence will. That's the point. That afternoon, I met Henry outside Chateau Blanc. He was still in his maitre d' uniform, shoulders squared, voice low. I shouldn't be doing this, he admitted, handing me a flash drive no bigger than my thumbnail. But what he did, leaving you like that, was wrong. The cameras caught everything, even his words. I blinked hard, fighting back tears. Why are you helping me? Because respect matters, he said simply, and he threw his away. Back at Rachel's office, we loaded the drive. The footage flickered to life on her monitor. Travis raising his glass, the room falling silent, his voice declaring, "You're still the same small-town nobody I found." The humiliation I'd felt that night stabbed fresh and raw, but this time I didn't shrink. I leaned closer, memorizing every syllable, every sneer. Rachel paused the video. This isn't humiliation anymore. This is Exhibit A. Over the next 2 weeks, Rachel and I built a case brick by brick. Every transfer, every receipt, every piece of jewelry charged to client accounts, we cataloged it all. She taught me how to track patterns, how to connect dates, how to let the numbers tell the story. Meanwhile, Travis grew careless. He strutted through our apartment, bragging on the phone about cleaning house at work, dismissing me with a wave when I tried to speak. He had no idea I was recording. No idea I was saving everything. One night, while he snored on the couch, I whispered into my phone's mic. September 22nd, 11:47 p.m. Travis admitting client funds were diverted. The words felt heavy, but not like chains, like weapons. At school, my students noticed the shift. "You're smiling more, Ms. Turner," little Emily said, slipping me a drawing of a castle. I knelt to hug her. "That's because I finally remembered I'm not invisible." Her words echoed later as I filed another folder into Rachel's cabinet. Invisible. That's what Travis wanted me to be. But every document I collected, every receipt I photographed was proof that I wasn't just visible, I was undeniable. The final piece came from an unexpected place, Amber Lawson, his secretary. She showed up at my classroom door one evening, mascara-streaked voice shaking. "I can't keep covering for him," she whispered. "He made me book the hotels, move the money, but he won't protect me if it blows up. You should know there's an account in the Caymans. He put your grandmother's jewelry up as collateral." My breath left my body in a rush. My grandmother's emeralds, my inheritance. Amber pressed an envelope into my hand. "Copies of everything. I'm done." When she left, I sat alone in the empty classroom, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The envelope heavy in my lap. Inside were statements, booking confirmations, wire instructions. The missing puzzle pieces. I texted Rachel. "We have it all." Her reply came back like a gavel. "Then it's time to decide how to use it." The courtroom smelled like floor polish and old paper, a place where lives were measured in exhibits and ruled on in sentences. I sat at counsel table beside Elizabeth Hartley, my attorney, her legal pad a field of neat lines and small, lethal arrows. Across the aisle, Travis occupied the defendant's side like it insulted him. His new suit fit, but nothing else did. The swagger was gone. In its place, a restless twitch in his jaw. "Ready," Elizabeth murmured without looking up. "As I'll ever be." She tapped the corner of the prenup. "Clause 7B does the heavy lifting. We just have to show the judge where to look." Judge Alvarez entered robes, whispering as she took the bench. "Counsel, appearances noted. We're here on petitioner's motion to enforce the prenuptial agreement and for temporary support." "Ms. Hartley," Elizabeth stood voice level and clean. "Your Honor, this case is about 3 things: documented adultery, public disgrace, and financial misconduct. All 3 trigger Section 7B of the parties' prenuptial agreement and void respondents' protections." She handed the clerk a binder. "Exhibit 1, the agreement. Please direct your attention to page 12, subsection 7B. The judge flipped red and nodded once. "I see it." Across from us, Travis's attorney, glossy hair, expensive cufflinks, rose with a controlled smile. "Your Honor, we dispute the characterization. What my client faces are allegations, not proof. This is an attempt to weaponize private marital discord." Elizabeth didn't blink. "Then we'll supply proof." She cued the screen on the evidence cart. The video lit the courtroom Chateau Blanc's private dining room, all crystal and velvet. Travis stood at the head of the table, his voice crisp over the table mics. "You're still the same small-town nobody I found. Happy birthday, Savannah. A woman like you should be grateful I even looked your way." No one breathed. Even the court reporter paused a fraction of a second before resuming her steady keystrokes. Audio and video authenticated by the restaurant's maitre d', Henry Duval Elizabeth said. Exhibit 2 includes his sworn declaration and staff corroborations. Exhibit 3 is the receipt $3,847.92 charged to Mrs. Turner's personal card after respondent abandoned her and 17 guests. Travis's attorney shifted. One unpleasant dinner, hardly Elizabeth cut in surgical. Exhibit 4, hotel invoices, airline itineraries, and jewelry purchases, contemporaneous with the supposed Boston trip, matched with respondents' text messages and calendar entries. Exhibit 5 statements and transfer logs prepared by forensic accountant Rachel Lawson showing monthly outflows averaging $12,000 to an undisclosed account. Exhibit 6. Lawson's analysis of funds laundered through client accounts and cycled offshore conduct currently under federal investigation. A murmur rolled through the gallery. The judge held up a hand. Silence fell. Your Honor, Elizabeth finished. Adultery is documented. Public disgrace is recorded. Financial misconduct is supported by expert analysis and under investigation. Section 7B is unambiguous respondent, forfeits protections. Petitioner requests immediate temporary support, exclusive occupancy of the marital residence and freeze orders to prevent further dissipation. The judge turned to Travis's table. Response. His attorney stood voice a notch tighter. We object to the admission of financial exhibits pending the outcome of the federal matter. As to the dinner video, this was a private dispute taken out of context. Judge Alvarez's eyebrows lifted. In a packed dining room with table microphones, that's quite a context. Travis rose, then unable to help himself. Your Honor, my wife is vindictive. She's orchestrated this. Elizabeth didn't look at him. Objection. Argument, not testimony. Sustained, the judge said. Mr. Mitchell, you'll speak through counsel. He sat, jaw working, a vein pressing at his temple like a metronome for bad decisions. Elizabeth called Rachel. Under oath, Rachel's testimony stayed cool and precise. Transfers, dates, ledgers, how the story of a marriage had been written in numbers long before it was spoken aloud. Then Henry's steady hands, careful words, authenticated the footage and described the aftermath. When he stepped down, he met my eyes briefly. Respect. That was all. Finally, Elizabeth approached with our last witness. Ms. Lawson, briefly, what is the effect of Clause 7B when its conditions are met? Rachel looked to the judge. It voids protections. Practically, it means the spouse who inserted those protections loses them. Thank you. Elizabeth rested her hand on the prenup like a seal. Your Honor, the law can be cold, but it is also clear. We ask that you enforce the contract respondent drafted. The judge took a long moment reading, annotating, underlining. When she spoke, her voice filled the room. The prenuptial agreement's Section 7B is enforceable. The evidence establishes at minimum documented adultery and public disgrace, each independently sufficient to trigger the clause. On that basis, respondent forfeits the protections otherwise afforded. The court grants petitioner exclusive occupancy of the marital residence, effective immediately temporary support as proposed, and orders a freeze on all accounts within respondent's control, pending further proceedings. The gavel's soft rap sounded louder than any shout. Travis's attorney leaned in, whispering urgently, but Travis stared at me like I'd rewritten gravity. He mouthed, "You'll be nothing without me." I stood gathering my things with hands that didn't shake. I was always somebody, I said quietly. The court reporter didn't take that down, but Henry, sitting in the back row, heard it. I saw it land. Outside, the hallway smelled like copier toner and possibility. Elizabeth squeezed my shoulder. This is the beginning of the end. No, I said, sliding my grandmother's emeralds back into my ears. It's the end of the pretending. My phone buzzed Rachel. Next step filings to secure assets and coordinate with the investigators. You did it. I exhaled a breath I felt all the way to my heels. Down the corridor, sunlight found a narrow window and poured through like a verdict. Clause 7B had never been words on a page. It had been a promise to myself I didn't know I'd made. And today it spoke for me. The headlines hit faster than I expected. By the next morning, the New York Business Journal splashed Travis's name across its front page. Partner implicated in elder financial fraud. Federal investigation widens. I sat at Emma's kitchen table, coffee steaming between my palms, as her husband scrolled through his tablet. It's everywhere, he said, tilting the screen toward me. CNBC, Bloomberg, even the morning gossip sites. Each article carried the same image: Travis, stepping out of his office jaw, clenched a line of federal agents behind him. Emma slid me a plate of toast. Eat something. He doesn't get to steal your appetite, too. I managed a bite dry and tasteless, but my stomach steadied. For the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for his footsteps, his criticism, his next demand. By mid-morning, the calls started. Reporters, former clients, even parents from my school. My voicemail filled with voices, some curious, some sympathetic, a few even gleeful. Patricia left a breathy message about maintaining discretion during such trying times. Marcus's wife asked if I'd known all along. I deleted them all. The only call I answered came from Henry. Mrs. Turner, he said deliberately, using my maiden name. I wanted you to know the owner has officially banned Mr. Mitchell from Chateau Blanc. Permanently. Staff cheered when they heard. I smiled into the phone. Thank you, Henry, for everything. Respect should not be rare, he replied gently. But when it is, it must be defended. Travis, meanwhile, was unraveling in public view. That afternoon, news stations captured him outside the courthouse, shoving cameras away as reporters shouted questions about wire fraud, adultery, and offshore accounts. His once perfect hair stuck up in clumps, his tie loose, his face pale. Rachel forwarded me a clip. He's rattled, she wrote. That makes him sloppy. Sloppy helps us. I watched the 30-second reel 3 times, not with triumph exactly, but with a clarity I hadn't known I needed. This wasn't the man I'd married. Maybe he never had been. He was just the illusion I'd agreed to play along with until I remembered I didn't have to. Back at school, whispers followed me down the hall. Teachers looked up from the copy machine, whispered over coffee. But my students, my third graders, didn't care about fraud or prenups or disgrace. Miss Turner. Sophia ran up, hugging my waist. Michael said you were in the newspaper, but I told him teachers don't go in newspapers unless they do something awesome. Awesome, huh? I laughed, kneeling to her level. Yeah, like save the day. Her certainty pierced me deeper than any headline. I wasn't a charity case or an embarrassment or a dependent to be written off. To them, I was still Miss Turner, the one who read stories with silly voices and let them eat crackers during spelling tests. And maybe that was enough. At night, Emma and I sorted through boxes of my things. Clothes I hadn't worn in years, shoes chosen for someone else's approval gifts that had strings attached. Keep or toss? She asked, holding up a pair of stilettos still in their tissue paper. Toss, I said without hesitation. What about this, a silk scarf, tags intact, the one Travis had bought after Patricia mocked my department store sweater? Toss, I repeated. 1 box at a time, the weight lifted. By the time we were done, what remained could fit in a single suitcase my grandmother's earrings, a handful of books, the red dress I'd reclaimed. The night before the settlement meeting, Travis tried one last time. He called from an unknown number voice, frayed. Savannah, listen, we can fix this. Say you overreacted, withdraw the complaints. I'll tell the partners you were emotional. I hung up before he finished. He called again, voicemail. You're making a mistake. You think they respect you now. They'll forget you the moment this scandal dies down. You'll be nothing." But as his words echoed in the silence, I realized something. He wasn't warning me. He was describing himself. The next morning, Elizabeth met me outside her office, her smile crisp. "We finalized today. He'll sign because he has no choice, but you need to be ready for him to lash out." I touched my earrings, the emeralds warm against my skin. I've been ready for years. I just didn't know it. We walked inside together past glass doors that reflected not the woman Travis had tried to erase, but the one who had finally remembered her own name. The settlement was signed, the ink still drying when I stepped out into the September air. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking into someone else's shadow. The world felt wide again. Yet freedom carried its own silence. No more arguments echoing through marble kitchens. No more slammed doors. No more walking on eggshells. Just me, Savannah Turner, rediscovering what my grandmother always knew. Strength doesn't come from wealth. It comes from resilience. At school, the banner above my classroom still read, "Welcome back, Miss Turner." My students crowded me with hugs, stories about soccer games, and drawings full of rainbows. Their innocence reminded me why I had fought so hard, not only to reclaim my dignity, but to show the next generation that cruelty never gets the final word. One evening, Emma and I sat on her porch while the sun melted into orange streaks. She handed me tea and studied my face. "You won," she said softly. "Did I asked. "He's lost everything, Emma. But I keep wondering, what does it mean to really win?" She tilted her head. "It means you remembered your worth. That's enough." But I thought about Travis, about the man who had once danced with me in a tiny kitchen before ambition devoured him. I didn't excuse what he did, fraud, betrayal, humiliation, but I realized carrying hatred would only chain me to him forever. Forgiveness wasn't for him. It was for me. The Bible says in Proverbs 16:18, "Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall." Travis's pride had written his downfall before I ever gathered the evidence. And yet I also remembered another verse, Ephesians 4:32. "Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as in Christ God forgave you." Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean letting him back into my life. It meant I no longer let his cruelty define me. He could carry the weight of his choices. I would carry only the lesson. There's a Western proverb I've always loved. He who digs a pit for others falls into it himself. That was Travis. He staged my humiliation, and the same night became Exhibit A in court. Another saying goes, "What is done in the dark will be brought to light." His secret affairs, stolen funds, false accounts surfaced like stones through water. And finally, Heraclitus's words rang true. Character is destiny. His character set his fate, but mine set me free. On a Sunday night I wore the red dress again, not to impress anyone, not to spite anyone, but because it made me feel alive. Emma's daughter Mia twirled beside me, wearing my grandmother's emerald earrings for her school dance. "Aunt Savvy," she asked, "does this mean we never have to see him again?" I smiled. It means we get to choose who belongs in our lives, and we choose kindness. She hugged me, and I knew the earrings were where they belonged, passing from one brave girl to the next. In the end, my story isn't about destruction. It's about survival, dignity, and the quiet courage to forgive without excusing. Travis will face his trials, but I have already won mine. Not because I ruined him, but because I rebuilt myself. If you followed me through every twist, every betrayal, every piece of evidence, and every courtroom revelation, then you know this isn't just another entry in the catalog of true revenge stories. It's proof that justice can come with grace, and that the sweetest revenge is not bitterness but freedom. So now I'll turn to you. What moment spoke to you most? Savannah paying that $4,000 bill with quiet dignity, or walking back into Chateau Blanc in the same red dress, head high. Have you ever faced humiliation and found a way to turn it into strength? Share your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your voices from every corner of the world. And if this story reminded you that no one can strip away your worth unless you let them, hit the like button and subscribe. Because every week we bring you more true revenge stories, not just about vengeance, but about resilience, redemption, and the human spirit that refuses to be broken. The red dress is back in my closet now. It doesn't carry shame anymore. It carries survival. And survival, when tempered with forgiveness, is the truest form of victory.